Okay, so getting back to homeschooling anytime, anywhere. The reason why I named my presentation such is because I want people to feel that they can homeschool their children without being dependent. Homeschool independently. Yes, that would be a good way to put it. Not dependent on being someplace, not being dependent on technology, not being dependent on electricity. If your power goes out, you don't have lights you can turn on, you don't have computers you can turn on, you don't have video players you can turn on. So it's great to be able to home educate your children, have the tools and the resources in your home, not being dependent upon even the public library because, well, at this time in our history, it's not so easy to just go down to the library and spend hours there poring over books and bringing books home. So I feel a very important thing to do at these times is to build our own home libraries with good books. No, great books. So I know everybody has different financial backgrounds, but what we did is grandparents often couldn't think what to get their grandchildren for Christmas. They grab a couple toys or they wanted to get them something different. So I suggested that they buy books for our children. And I gave them book lists of specific books that we wanted to have in our house. So a lot of our book collection comes from grandparents, Christmas, birthdays, Easter, anytime they feel like buying something for their grandchildren. So we are very thankful to our extended family members for helping us build our library. Our library can begin with a great dictionary. This is a big dictionary. It is a complete dictionary. Now, when I was first starting out, I thought it would be great to have a children's dictionary in the house. So I brought this lovely hardcover scholastic dictionary. Problem being, it was what they call a concise dictionary, or a shortened version of the dictionary. It had nice pictures in it and big print, so it looked great, looked very kid-friendly. However, there were words that we would go to look up, and they weren't in the dictionary. And I thought I was being this great mom teacher by teaching my children how to use a dictionary, but the dictionary wasn't working. So we went out and bought this dictionary. I learned. So one of the beauties of home education is that mom and dad learn along with the kids. So I brought this dictionary, and we haven't had a problem finding any words in this dictionary yet. Print may be a little bit smaller, but children have good eyes. They don't necessarily need great big letters in order to read them. So, dictionary number 1. Dictionary number 2 would be American Dictionary of the English Language, Noah Webster, 1828. Why would we need a dictionary from 1828? Well, word origins and word use. I didn't realize how much we have changed or evolved meanings of words over the years. There's old-fashioned words that we don't even use anymore. And we've read a lot of classic literature, a lot of older literature. It's great to read books that were written many years ago. Great value systems, great fun, great way to learn about life from many years ago. Often more interesting than reading history books. So anyways, this was been a great book for us. Another resource for your library would be atlases. This atlas was purchased by my in-laws for their grandchildren, and it's been fantastic. We love maps. Whatever we're doing, whatever we're talking about, happens somewhere, right? A book that we're reading happens in a place. So we always find that place on a map. This is a really detailed atlas of Canada. It has roads, it has mountains, it has every region, it has city maps. It's a fantastic resource to have to learn about our great country. We also have a world atlas as well that we refer to. One of my other favorite resources, maybe not part of the library, but something really important, is old-fashioned paper maps. So that was a map of Canada. I also have a laminated map of the world. The world map still lives on our kitchen table. It's the tablecloth. It's covered by a sheet of clear plastic vinyl. And that has been an awesome learning resource for the whole family. If the Olympic Games are on and we want to look up a particular country, we can find it on the map. And we all learn. I think it's great to have this picture in our heads of what the world looks like, what the planet looks like. A globe, that's another great tool that we have had in our house. So we can see what picture of the world. So if we're talking about Switzerland, we can picture in our minds where it is. If we're talking about Antarctica, we know it's down here. Australia, they know where Australia is. Being able to locate and know where countries are. Well, especially at this time in the world when we hear news stories about the virus happening in different countries, in the UK, in France, in China, in Wuhan. Where is this place called Wuhan? Well, we can look that up in our atlas or on our world map, and then we know exactly where we're talking about. Okay, so let's move on to early education. I have a pile of resources for early education that I want to show you. Some of the things that we did, really there are two subjects, two things that you need to teach your children: reading and math. I know your provincial guidelines may say something different. They say reading, math, science, social studies. There's quite a list, and you all have ideas of what you were taught in school, and this is how you might initially think that you should teach your children spelling and printing and vocabulary, comprehension, all those subtopics of English language arts, and math, science, phys ed, health. What about French? What about teaching languages? I'm sure I missed something there. But if we start thinking that way, we can overwhelm ourselves with how am I going to teach 8 or 10 subjects to my 6-year-old, to my 8-year-old, to my 10-year-old. By trying to do that, we would be taking on 3 times as much work as a school teacher. So there are many ways to learn. We have something called unit studies in homeschool. There's a wonderful one out there called Gather Round Homeschool. I didn't use it, but many homeschool moms tell me how much they enjoy using it. It's a Canadian product written by a homeschool mom. You can buy 1 unit a month for 10 months, and it covers a wide variety of topics, and you can teach all of your children together using unit studies. I do have a few examples of unit study material to show. We'll get to some of that. But roughly how it works is if you're teaching multiple children, so multiple ages, multiple abilities, you do the reading. When it comes to assignments, there's different assignments for different ages. So you're going to expect something more from your 12-year-old than you are from your 6-year-old. Where your 12-year-old might be able to write half a page or a full page, you'd be lucky to get a couple of sentences out of your 6 or your 7-year-old. So there's usually a variety of activities, hands-on activities, different activities for different ages, and information on how to go deeper into a topic for those that are particularly interested and want to go deeper into a topic. So the first thing we want to do with our children is usually teach them how to read. This book, called Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons, was about a $30 resource, still available today, but I used this book to teach all of my children how to read. It starts off sounding out letters, moves on to blending the sounds to make simple words. Within the first day or two of using the book, children can read a few simple words. It gives you very detailed information at the beginning, explaining how to use the book, and it says follow every step exactly. It tells you how many times to go over each sound with your child. But, you know, with my first child, after going over some sounds as many times as it says, she turns to me and says, "Mommy, why do I have to keep saying that over again if I already know what it is?" I'm like, good point, 4-year-old. So I'm learning from my 4-year-old. I don't have to follow the curriculum exactly. If she's got it, she's got it. So again, use your curriculum as a guideline. This particular one, you need to follow most of it. But again, if it says to go over the ah sound 15 times and your child has it after 3 times, great. Stop at 3 and move on. So my 4-year-old learned how to read with this book in 100 Easy Lessons. You can use, it's usually, they say 15 minutes a day, but some children, maybe 5 minutes once a day is enough. Maybe 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, 5 minutes in the evening is enough. Maybe your child can handle 15 minutes all at once or 30 minutes all at once. Every child is different. So work with what you got. My second child, I think it took us 2 years to get through this book with my second child. And my third child, well, she was probably pretty well on schedule with the book. So 1 book, 3 children, used 3 different ways to meet the needs of those children. With this particular book, by the time we got to the end, it states that the child is learning at a grade 2 level, or I'm sorry, reading at a grade 2 level. Along with learning how to read, they have your children print the letter sounds. At the time they're learning to see them, they print them. They write them down it can be on a piece of paper. It was very interesting in this book. It didn't say to use nice lined paper. As long as they are writing, if they can just do it on blank paper, no lines, fine. If they're able to use lined paper, fine. But whatever works for your child. Some children learn to print their letters by using a sandbox. You can get a container of sand, one of your nice kitchen Tupperware containers, fill it with sand or rice, and your children can trace letters with their fingers in the sand. Because some children are ready to use a pencil. They have those fine motor skills developed earlier. Some kids, not so early. Learning how to read can be done at age 4, 6, 10, or even 12. Some children are later learning how to read, and 12 is when it works for them. So please don't have any expectations of your children, and don't feel that you're doing something wrong if they aren't learning on the schedule of school. Again, your child is unique. You may find they're way ahead in reading, but maybe not so. I don't want to say behind. No, I should never say behind. Your child is always exactly where they're meant to be. And that's what we need to remember. Always where they're meant to be. I found these neat little books that I used with my kids, and we wrote down a whole little notebook full of reasons why we like homeschool. And it was a very positive exercise to do. Encouraged the kids, encouraged our families when we have received criticism from extended family members for keeping our children home. We would just pull this book out and read through it. Some reasons why they like being at home. Well, I'll read some of them to you because some of them are kind of funny. The first one says, I have more time to play, a longer recess. I can fly a kite. So this was quite a long time ago, and I did the printing and my daughter drew the pictures. And she writes, or says, I can do my work using fancy pencils or colored pencils or markers. I can wear fancy dress-up clothes to school. Princess dresses, whatever. Oh, and then there's homeschooling wearing your pajamas. That's a popular one. Yeah. I can cuddle up to my teacher anytime. I like that one. Oh, my goodness. How about this one? We can do phys ed when we are bare naked. I forgot that one. I can lay under the Christmas tree and do my work. I don't have to go outside on freezing cold days like today. Today is Wednesday, January the 5th, 2005. It is minus 36 degrees outside. That might give you a clue where we live. Anyways, that has a lot of fond memories. For printing, we did something called copywork. And it's something that's kind of old-fashioned, but I found that it worked really well. We had these little notebooks where I would write down something and then my child would copy exactly what they saw. Now, you might think copying, oh, that's plagiarism, but just in the context of what we were doing, this book happens to be scripture. I would print the words, nothing can separate us from the love of God, Romans 8:39, and then my child would write below what they saw. We would also use copy work for poems or songs, and I had a little whiteboard with letters on it that they could copy. They could trace over top of letters. There's so many ways to learn how to print, creative ways to learn how to print. Well, talking about writing stories, writing papers is a challenge for many children. One of the best programs that I have and used for several years, mostly with just my oldest, is called Excellence in Writing. It's produced by the Institute for Excellence in Writing, IEW. Now, there's a website that I'll let you Google. Andrew Poudois is the creator of this writing program, and it is a fantastic program. It gives children ideas. Rather than just say, go write a paper on fish, it starts with a paragraph and information. It teaches you how to pick out key words and key things and to write simple sentences from what you remember reading. And then in slow steps, it teaches you how to make your sentences better, how to add descriptive words, adjectives, adverbs. It talks about colorful verbs, changing sentences around so that every sentence in a paragraph doesn't run the same way. Also, for our young children who are learning creative writing skills, here's a pretty cool book called Story Starters. helping children write like they've never written before. This book, it does exactly that. It starts a story, gives you a page, and gives you a picture or a couple pages. It gives you writing helps and then questions. So children have a good idea of what they're being asked to write about before they take information out of their head and try to put it on paper. So it's a very large book, a really excellent book. Can be used for ages, if your children, if they're academically advanced, grade 1s and 2s could use this. It can be used all the way up to grades 6 and 7 and 8. Social studies. Well, for social studies, this book, The Story of Canada by Janet Lund, is very, very well written. All we did for social studies is basically read this book to our kids, other books about Canada, and just reading great novels and fiction with our children. The Story of Canada is beautifully written. It's beautifully illustrated. Hard to show you everything on the video, but it starts out with our First Nations people, the history, their customs, all about them, what parts of Canada they were in. We get into the fur trade in Canada, and when we're Confederation days, Canada becoming a country. So just learning about our beautiful country's colorful history. This book, I learned from reading this book. Grade 1s learned from listening and looking at pictures and talking. So we would read a couple pages and talk. Some days maybe just read one page and talk about it. Maybe we even probably skip some parts if there were some parts of history that we didn't find so interesting. But we're free to do that. We're free to study social studies as little or as much as we want. If we want to skip some days, we can do that. If we want to spend 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, half an hour a day, it's all good. Science is a subject that many parents feel they aren't qualified to teach, or they're not interested in science. But finding some good resources can just make the difference. We found this whole series, Young Explorer series, exploring creation. There's with botany, we have astronomy, we have zoology 1, 2, and 3. We have anatomy. I can't remember what all else, but we did get, I think I brought the whole series. They're just beautiful coffee table books. Really, I've kept them all. They cover many topics, color pictures. If there's something that you're not as interested in, you can just skip it and go on to something else. There are experiments, science experiments included throughout the book. There's a journal that can be purchased to work along in this book, completely optional. There's review questions, there's tests if you want to go that far and do more like a school-based system. Or the older your children are, the more you may want to encourage them to study through courses as if they're taking it at school, to prepare them for college and university or whatever post-secondary endeavors may come their way. But these are fantastic books. They are published by Apologia Ministries, creation-based materials. What I really like is how the author, he himself is a homeschool dad. He's a professor of science at a university in the United States. But he presents the material, different viewpoints. Sometimes when there are, often in science, like there are various ways of looking at data. We certainly know that today with this virus business that's going on. But he's objective, and he will try to see things from different sides, and then he will add his opinion. So I really appreciate that. about the author of this particular series. As I mentioned earlier, math and reading are the two main things to work on with your children. If you just think about math and reading, reading and math, and then when you get that done, add in other things as you have time. For science, I should also mention today, you can get videos on YouTube on any subject going. But it is really nice to build a family library with these creation science books. For high school levels, well, actually from grade 7 to 12, they have books that are about this thick. They have general science, physical science, biology, chemistry, anatomy and physiology, physics. I think that's it for high school sciences. But they're fantastic to learn with. Everything is very, very clearly explained, very well explained in those books. Each one of those books for high school is worth about 2 years of studying, according to the public education system. I believe a high school credit is usually just defined as 100 instructional hours, but it's going to take a couple hundred hours to go through a lot of those books and work through the material that's in them. But they're very, very, very well laid out, very interesting, and they're excellent resources that your family can use. I've gone back and looked various things up in those books as an adult, so they're books that I'm going to keep. They're part of the family library. And who knows, one day I might have grandchildren that are being home educated. So I'm going to move on to what I think is most people's least favorite subject to teach, and that is math. I don't have handy any early years math materials, but I should just mention Ruth Beechik, Beechik, the ABCs of homeschooling, and she has a fantastic book. It used to be a series of 3 books, but I think she's compiled it into one. And she talks about how to homeschool the first few years, really without any curriculum, without any materials, just using common sense approach to teaching. I think over the years we've become too dependent on materials and resources and think we have to have all this stuff in order to educate, but really and truly, we don't. I listened to a talk one time about a lady who used nothing but her Bible to teach her children. She was a homeschool pioneer way back in the 1990s, and she used her Bible. There weren't curricular resources to buy because homeschooling was in its infancy. But she was creative, and God's given us the gift of creativity. So all we have to do is tap into that gift through prayer, and the Lord will direct us on our homeschool journey. So for math, I have lots of things here. So 2 programs I used were Math UC and teaching textbooks. Those are probably the 2 biggest or most popular math resources in the whole homeschool community in North America. They both have websites, mathuc.com and teachingtextbooks.com. Math UC has a teacher's guide which fully explains the whole concept being taught. It also has video, so the fellow that wrote the material has videos and you can watch the instructional video along with your child. And then there's workbooks for the student to work through. They have it all sort of nicely laid out, a page per day, a unit per week, and we get through all the units in a year. If you like to keep to a schedule, don't feel you have to keep to anybody's schedule except the schedule that works the best for you and your family. Anyways, Math UC was a great program, still available. It's written by an American, but there are Canadian versions of it, which is kind of nice. So you can get, when they're talking about math, they'll be talking about Canadian dollars and loonies and toonies. One time before the Canadian version was available, we were doing a math problem and it talked about $1 bills. And my daughter says, I can't do that problem. There's no such thing as a $1 bill. Well, there is not, so I explained to her that there is in the U.S. and that she can do the math problem. We have a loonie instead of a $1 bill, so we'll just substitute. But, so great program, Matthew C., still available, not cheap, but worth the investment. Many people will try using what I call grocery store or Walmart workbooks to do home education. Those books that you can buy in the grocery store to help with math and reading or whatever subject, they are that helpers. They're not meant to be used as a primary teaching resource. They don't usually well explain or fully explain a concept. They're meant as additional worksheets to reinforce materials already learned. So if you go to the grocery store, or I think Staples has some, Walmart, wherever, please don't use those as primary teaching resources for your students, or you will be frustrated in a short amount of time. Anyways, getting back to math, I do have a handout somewhere that I should get and try to attach to this video somehow. A friend of mine who homeschooled 6 or 7 children and has a math degree, she put together a paper listing what to teach your kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2s without using any math curriculum. It was basically learning how to count, learning how to skip count, learning how to count backwards, adding, subtracting, basic math concepts that we really need to get a good grasp of at the beginning before moving on to more difficult concepts in math. So there are plenty of, I don't think teaching textbooks, they don't have a program even for grade 1 and 2. I think they start at grade 3. Teaching textbooks, I'll show you. This is pre-calculus, so this is grade 12. But this is pretty well what it looks like for all levels. A big, thick book. And this has all the student assignments in here, and it has all of the explanations of how to do every operation on the list. And it also has, they come with DVDs for teaching. Really, really excellent program. It will explain it, it gives examples, it's interactive, and the student does their work. They can either do it in the workbook or they can follow along on the DVD and write it out on paper, and then they just type their answer in. If their answer is wrong, then the program will explain how they should have done or what they should have done in order to get the correct answer. So a really good program. Now today, this program, I don't think they still sell it as DVDs, but you can buy an online subscription to this program. So I'm a little bit less in favor of encouraging people to use the online program, as my children have, well, preferred using the workbook and using less of the video. And it's also a more independent way to work. It's using the book as opposed to, online. Well, what happens if your computer breaks or your power goes off, or the company goes out of business and you bought this, year-long subscription to this math program? Where once I have the book, I have Matthew C., the video, the instruction guide, I've got it all. Other math resources are just books. There's a set of math books called Life with Fred. Fun, and a great way, creative way to learn math. I didn't use them, I had a look at them, but I highly recommend that they be a resource that you look up. Many other books, like this is not a grade level book, this is Painless Algebra. Algebra can be a difficult concept for people to get, but this kind of book, ungraded again, so if your kid's using an ungraded book and they may not be up to, quote, par on math, They don't know that they're behind or don't have that feeling like, oh, I'm not where I should be, but just they are where they are meant to be. All the math you'll ever need, a self-teaching guide. This is a great resource. Well, most of you are familiar with how the math system works today. There's early years math, adding, subtracting by grade 3. Typical time is to learn multiplication. Grade 4, they learn division, and I forget exactly how it goes after that, but fractions come in, decimals come in. Algebra comes in, advanced algebra, geometry, calculus, trigonometry. Do our children really need all that depth in math today? That's a big question that's really worth asking. I was at a store a while ago. I needed to purchase, or I didn't need to purchase, but I was going to purchase an item, and it was marked as 50% off. Regular price, $34.99. Well, the number 1750 popped into my head really fast. I went to check out that item, and the cashiers said the cash registers weren't working properly, so they had to figure out the price. And they had a very hard time figuring out the price. A young lady who looked about 18, 19, or 20, she didn't know how to use a calculator to figure out half of $34.99. She didn't know how to use a pen and piece of paper to figure out half of $34.99, and I was really shocked, surprised. Another young lady, my one child went to buy an item at the pet store, and I always had my kids use cash, and they looked after their own money, and I always had them, before they pay for something, to figure out how much it's going to be, estimate the tax, add that on to the cost of the item, and then when you go pay, make sure you get your right amount of change back. Well, shortly after we did away with the penny, clerks in stores had to learn how to round off to the nearest 5. And when my daughter went to pay for an item, instead of giving, it ended with 92 cents. She should have got 10 cents back. The cashier just gave her a nickel back. And I know you may think this is petty, but this young lady did not know how to do math. My daughter knew she should have had a dime back, not a nickel back, but I felt for this poor clerk who didn't know how to round off to the nearest 5 cents. Another time, my one daughter was working at the grocery store, and a co-worker had a gentleman buy some groceries that came to $17 and change. He was paying with a $100 bill, so the cashier typed in 100, and the computer said to give him back $82. She didn't know how to count out $82 in bills. She did not know how to go 20, 40, 60, 82. She had to call for help.